to be in two parts. We're going to hear from the residents who brought this about, and then we're going to hear from the councillors. They'll have 3 minutes each to let you know what they know about it, how they see the future, if that's what they want to say, but they'll have 3 minutes to speak to you each, not 3 minutes between you. They'll have 3 minutes each, and then we'll go to the questions and answers from the councillors. Now, we want to make this as positive as possible. There's no point just haranguing people. We're not going to get anywhere. There's some really good questions. There's a lot of doubles and trebles, so I may not ask the same person. If you don't want to ask your question, I'm happy to read it for you. So if I call your name and you say no, that's fine. I will just read it out for you, okay? So without further ado, we'll start from this side, and it's Alistair.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for attending tonight. My name is Alistair Mackenzie. I'm a resident of Marske and have been since 1978. And what I'd like to do is just briefly cover the background to this situation so it can be easily determined how we got to where we are. The background is as follows. Land south of the Saltburn to Darlington Railway at Marske was included in a local draft plan created by Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council and cited for development. The plan was eventually rejected after a good deal of public interest, lobbying of councillors and debate in the council chamber. The plan included land east and west of the A1085 between the railway and the A174, as well as areas south of the A174 and up to New Marske. Rejection of the plan permitted ad hoc planning applications, one of these being that of Marske Farm, on land owned by the West Midlands Teachers' Pension Fund. The application for several hundred houses and various other features, including a hotel, pub, park and ride and filling station, was considered by Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council and ultimately rejected, citing ancient monument on this land and the developer's imposition on designated greenway. The planning applicant consequently appealed, and a planning inquiry was initiated to evaluate the merits of both the application and the council's rejection. To assist any such inquiry, the applicant and council are obliged to create an agreement titled Statement of Common Ground, which you'll find talked about a little bit more tonight, but abbreviated to SOCG. This document must be in place within 6 weeks of the commencement of the inquiry, and is created to record those aspects of the planning application which are not in contention, allowing the inquiry to concentrate only on those aspects which are in contention. Amongst the items recorded in the SOCG was a proposal to restrict traffic flow under the railway bridge from two-way flow to single-file traffic controlled by traffic lights to accommodate permanent pedestrian access between the village and the development. The proposal was agreed by the Council's highway engineer on the 30th of August 2016, shortly before the start of the planning inquiry. Whilst the building application had been subject to public consultation, followed by a planning inquiry at which the public could take part, the road restriction under the bridge was agreed by RCBC without consultation with residents of Marske, numbering 8,000 plus. In particular, those living immediately adjacent to the proposed alteration, residing at the south end of the High Street close to the railway bridge. Similarly, as far as we can determine, no consultation was held with other road users from neighbouring communities, emergency services or public transport operators. Lastly, we understand no consultation was held with councillors representing the population of Marske or other likely affected communities of the borough. A group of concerned residents have therefore come together to challenge this proposal, and following representations to the parish council have called this meeting with the objection of convincing the Borough Council to rethink this proposal and agree alternative measures to achieve suitable pedestrian access at this location without the disruption to traffic flow that we foresee. Thank you.
Okay, now Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, my name's Paul Cawthorne. I used to live in Marske in the 70s and 80s, but moved away for work, as some of us had to do, but recently retired, and we thought Marske was such a wonderful place, we moved back. And when we moved back, we found this problem that beset everybody. I've been a traffic engineer and transport planner for getting on for 40 years. I've worked for councils and private consultants and also for government agencies. So I know a little bit about traffic and how it works and that sort of thing. We looked through the evidence that was presented to the public inquiry, and it didn't say very much at all about the amount of traffic that was existed on the high street. There was just a couple of numbers about how much traffic went under the bridge, and you had to look very hard to find that. My wife, when we moved away, my wife started a traffic survey company, and that's been going for 30 years. So, out of the goodness of her heart and the concerns for what was going on, she offered to do a traffic survey. That traffic survey was undertaken on the 1st of February this year. It covered the hours 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the morning to try and find out where the peak hour was. We covered the 2:30 to 3:30 to coincide with the various schools coming out. And we also did 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock to find out what the evening peak was. In the morning period, the biggest traffic flow was between 8 and 9. Obviously, there was just an hour when the schools came out, and in the evening peak, the busiest hour was 5 till 6. But long story short, about what came out of that traffic survey is that the busiest hour was underneath the bridge, was in the evening peak, and that was 899 vehicles two-way, so about 900. They also carried out turning movements at the Meadow Road and Station Close junction, and the total number of vehicles recorded in the busiest hour, again, which was 5 till 6 in the evening, there was 1,007 vehicles at that junction. They also took sort of note of how many pedestrians walked underneath the bridge in those periods. In the 3 hours, sorry, in the between 8 and 9, there was 2 pedestrians walked under the bridge, and then between 9 and 10 there was 3. The other hours, nobody walked under the bridge. Just put it in context. Using the zebra crossing between the Zetland and Meadow Road, each hour was roughly about 12 pedestrians crossing one way or another. The evening peak, between 5 and 6, there was 18. So that just puts sort of traffic in context as to what goes on there. Really, from looking at it from a traffic engineer's perspective, in simple terms, the proposal is really to put a footpath under the bridge, which in effect reduces the capacity of the A1085 to half what it is as a two-way road. It's not rocket science, but there we are. The proposal is to control, use traffic signals to control and enforce single lane working under the bridge in a shuttle arrangement, and this will result, as you can imagine, in queues on both approaches to the bridge where none exists at present. There's no traffic problems there in terms of delays or the like. We searched through the developer's information that was presented to the inquiry, and it's quite hard to find what there is there. But the results presented showed an average queue. I emphasise average, so that means sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. An average queue of 13 vehicles travelling south towards the bridge. So that's where the traffic lights are red. The average queue is 13 vehicles. But there's no explanation in the information that was presented as to what really the impact of that 13 vehicles would be. So obviously we've got to sort of do a bit of lateral thinking ourselves to see what we think it is. Fortunately, or unfortunately, not long ago in February, there was some temporary traffic lights outside the Ship Inn on the High Street. So I just took the opportunity to sort of measure out how long the queue was for 13 vehicles. I was surprised because usually I'm used to sort of people squeezing up at queues in cities and that, but here the queue length was 96 metres. So I'll just put that into context then. If we say, look at that sort of length of queue back from the proposed traffic lights just south of the bridge, the distance from the signal stop line to Meadow Road Junction is 64 metres. So already we've got a queue that's going to go beyond Meadow Road Junction. And therefore it obviously extends back through the junction and over the zebra crossing. So could well cause delays to drivers turning into and out of Meadow Road. Could be difficulties for pedestrians trying to cross at the zebra, and of course there's those residents who are adjacent to where this queue would be. How do they get in and out of their driveways? One possibility may be that keep clear markings could be introduced for the residential accesses, and a box junction or something similar at the zebra and Meadow Road Junction. But that will only add to the queue, and just being on the conservative side, that's another 29 metres to the queue. So really, when you add that up, we're going to end up with, on an average situation, a queue that will stretch back to the bus stop. So that's regular queue. We haven't done any further assessments than that, but it's just so that you can envisage what it may well be like in an average situation. What the developer doesn't say is what the maximum length of queue will be. So averages are usually 50% of the time, so some of the time the queue is going to be even longer. The other aspect to the proposal is that there will be a pedestrian crossing on the south side of the bridge, so that people could walk from the black path across to the east side of the road to walk under the bridge and then back down. That will add more time to the signal delay time for drivers, because obviously pedestrians need time to cross the bridge. The other thing is there'll be a need to signalise the entrance out of the coal yard. So when a vehicle wants to come out of the coal yard, everything else has to stop so that they can get out and then clear, particularly if you're going back into Marske. So all in all, the proposal is going to be, in my view, anyway, quite detrimental to the residents of Marske, those who pass through Marske for whatever reason, and those who have business in Marske. So in effect, I would say to pursue the developer's traffic light proposal would certainly disadvantage the existing community, and from my opinion would be a retrograde step. Certainly from my own experience, I'm of the opinion that a more equitable alternative needs to be found. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now Anne will shorter presentation.
Right, good evening.
Or not.
Oh, sorry, not in front of the mic. Good evening, ladies and gents. My name's Anne Beckley. I was formerly Anne Smith. I've been a resident of Marske since my family moved here from Manchester in 1958. So I've seen a lot of changes in Marske itself. I'm a retired teacher, and apart from that, my only qualification to speak on this issue is common sense. My aim tonight is to inform you of what comes after any decision about putting these traffic lights at the bridge, and hopefully persuade you that the lights are not a good and safe option. I'm referring to this leaflet that has been passed out. There may be spare copies if anybody hasn't got one in front of you, called The Future ? As you can see on this leaflet, I start by asking 4 questions. Why is the path on the opposite side of the road to the development? In the documentation submitted for planning, a pavement is provided on the same side of the road up to where the proposed position of the lights are. So why do pedestrians have to cross the busy A1085 in order to gain access to Marske? It doesn't make sense. Surely this is increasing risk to pedestrians. My 4th question on there, is it a coincidence the West Midlands Teachers Pension Fund own the land on the other side of the road as well?
Toffs Farm.
Pardon?
Toffs Farm.
Toffs Farm, yeah. My 4th question becomes self-explanatory, as the whole point for this development to go ahead requires pedestrian access into Marske, and that must be secured. So if you put the pavement on the opposite side, you are also creating access for any future development on land on Toffs Farm. So you're not just considering Marske Farm. Right. Looking at this form here, the photos on here, I took myself with my trusty phone. Now all of these photos that I've taken, please note, were taken at eye level. If you're in a car, you are 50 centimetres or 1'6" in old money, lower than that. Right, if you can see, the bridge is angled, alright? As many of you who drive on the road, you'll notice that it's angled, and large vehicles often straddle this road as it is. So will there be enough room for them to negotiate safely with the reduction of the road width? I won't dwell on the inevitable queue in traffic, which will not just be at peak times. It's already been elegantly described by Paul from our own up-to-date traffic survey. And you know, as I say, these photographs I've taken are at eye level. And this has to be borne in mind. When you look at an ordnance survey map or pictures of Google Earth, etc., you are unaware of the nuances of the 1085. Indeed, Ashley Holmes, who did submissions on behalf of these West Midlands Pension Fund, did not actually illustrate the rise and fall of the terrain adequately. In fact, they showed no scaling on a cross-section of the terrain, suggesting that there was no issue of blind spots. Nor do they illustrate the blind corner leading onto the bridge as you come from Quarry Lane roundabout. That is where the crossing is going to be sited. I've hopefully highlighted both of these points with the first 2 photos here in the centre. The one on the left is looking actually down into Marske, the one on the right looking up from Marske Farm development up to a blind summit on the hill. So, if you drive along that road regularly, you know as well as I do, autumn, spring, the sun is low and you are blinded. So Dick now point out to you that when you go up from that blind summit, what happens next? Well, you're going to have a development, and you're going to have an entrance into that development. And at the top of that blind summit, that's where the entrance to the new development is going to be. Their idea is that they are going to put ghost islands which all feature on Redcar Road, if they're turning left or right into Churchill and Long Beck. That sort of setup is going to be done. So, imagine what's going to happen. You're going to have traffic going to turn right into this new estate, but traffic crossing the flow of the traffic to turn out. Why? Why wasn't this considered right from the start? Right? Definitely accidents are waiting to happen, not to mention, as I say, the traffic turning out onto the main floor. You'll also notice I mentioned there's a second exit, an entrance to the development, which is further down near the roundabout. And this is indicated on these bottom photographs. This is the actual position of approximately I could gauge from the plans. Looking, or the one on the left is looking towards Marske, the one on the right looking towards Quarry Lane. Closer to Quarry Lane roundabout will be a second entrance. That entrance, again governed by a ghost island setup, will be to your petrol station, 60-bed hotel, drive-through and pub diner. Something we really need. I've heard you've got, as I said, it's not just going to be a question of lights at the bridge. You've got to consider what comes afterwards with the development. Right? Overleaf on the other side here, I've tried to sort of give you an illustrated bird's eye view of what the 1085 will become. Yes, the road will have to be widened to accommodate these ghost islands, but positioning them at blind stop beggars belief. I've heard arguments that the 1085 is a rat run for people to get to Redcar, and the lights of the bridge will stop excess traffic. Please think again. The A1085 is as part of the primary route network of Redcar and Cleveland. The road will have a reduction in the speed limit to 30 miles an hour for the full length from the roundabout to the high street. So again, traffic slows, more traffic slows, build up of traffic lights, crossing, queues. Well, there you go. I've also shown photos of the examples cited by these agents of two existing strategies for footpaths under a bridge employed elsewhere in Redcar and Cleveland. These are the two photos here, and as some of you will recognise, one on the left is the one at Saltburn Lane, Skelton, and the one on the right is the one exiting from North Skelton, going to the A174. Now, both of those roads do not take the amount of traffic that we've discovered. Paul's explained to you, 800 cars per hour or whatever. Can you imagine? Right. Indeed, in their submission, they projected an expected increase of traffic of 558 vehicles in the morning and 576 in the evening. Granted, not all will be travelling through Marske High Street, but both the increase in pedestrian footfall of possible students attending outward, people wishing to access the facilities of Marske once the development is complete. There's no indication of this. One thing I have not highlighted in this leaflet is the issue of the actual high street itself before you reach the bridge. i.e. the bus stop on the meadow side of the road and the zebra crossing by the top house, Zetland Hotel. Remember, this is all in a space of 150 metres to the bridge. So here's a little scenario for you. Bus is at the bus stop, stopped, blocking the road, because it isn't in a Anyway, so traffic then builds up behind. Because oncoming traffic from the bridge, thanks to the traffic light, means that they have right of way. So that prevents anybody overtaking or getting past the bus. So we get past the bus, what do we hit? Zebra crossing. Marvellous. And when you've negotiated all that, you get to the lights at the bridge, they're on red. Lights on green, follow the traffic up the hill, over the blind summit to find vehicles queuing to the right, into the estate and traffic trying to turn out across the floor of the estate, and then repeat this again in about another 100 metres for people going in and out for a petrol station or whatever. So who's telling me the flow of traffic isn't going to be affected, resulting in queues, and that there will be no significant increase of risk to any users of the A1085? I'd love to lead them. The Redcar-Cleveland core strategy has 10 aims. I'll give you a few of them. To improve the means of accessibility throughout the borough and beyond, I suggest that the traffic lights plus the new junctions for the estate will reduce accessibility and increase risk. To accommodate development where it will provide the opportunity for people to satisfy their day-to-day needs locally or in locations which minimise the need to travel. People will have to travel to Marske to access the facilities regardless. Accommodate the efficient delivery of goods and supplies. Yeah, we've got to remember we've got businesses in Marske. How can the large vehicles negotiate a single lane onto the bridge if they're bringing goods into the businesses, the suppliers, etc.? Give priority to pedestrian and cycle movements. Oh, we mentioned people on push bikes, didn't we? And have access to high-quality public transport services. They weren't even consulting the bus services. Create safe and secure layouts which minimise conflicts between traffic and cyclists and pedestrians and avoiding street clutter. Well, you're putting in ghost islands there, you're increasing street clutter. It's unbelievable. Common sense doesn't come into any of it. Consider the needs of people with disabilities by all modes of transport. Do I need to say anything else? In my opinion, none of these core strategies have been satisfied. So how the hell did the Secretary of State pass this through? Whilst the light system at the bridge is an immediate solution for pedestrian access into Marske, please consider what the future entails and the increased accident risk to all who will use the A1085. I find it incredulous that the emergency service has not even been consulted. And bearing in mind the blind spots that I have tried to illustrate with those photographs, I wonder what a road traffic accident investigation officer would make of these proposals. I really do wonder. History has taught us that the cheapest solutions are not always the best. I don't need to say things like Grenfell Tower or whatever. So please think carefully before advocating traffic lights at the bridge. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Now, Peter Finlinson.
Chairman, I think you said 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's been rambling for half an hour.
3 minutes, you say?
For the council.
For the council, and how long for the...
how long do you think you'll...
I've 1,200 words.
1,200 words?
Yeah.
You in a hurry?
Okay, settle down.
Wants to speak English, what?
Settle down. The soon he starts, the soon he finishes. Carry on.
All right.
Carry on.
Right, thank you. My name's Peter Finlinson. I'm a resident of Marske. To a certain extent, I invented this meeting out of my own head, so if you've got me to blame for you being here. Right, this meeting was called to discuss a particular decision of Redcar-Cleveland Borough Council and to agree a way forward to arrive at an alternative traffic management scheme which would not adversely affect the residents of Marske by damaging our community. As you've heard from other speakers, we have a lot of fact-researched evidence about the impact on the village of the proposed narrowing of the main road into Marske. When we had the first campaign in January, that's the sort of information that we put forward to residents And the vast majority of them listened to what we had to say, and they engaged absolutely with the campaign. We did some surveys online, face-to-face, all sorts of different methods for the February meeting, and over 90% of the people who responded were against the installation of the traffic lights. Public opinion made it clear that the proposed scheme would not be acceptable. The figures are that we had 805 responses during the period 9th of January to 6th of February, with 749 people saying no to the proposal and 56 saying yes. That's 93% of people of that section saying no. But that does create a difficulty, because as Alistair Mackenzie explained, an agreement which forms part of the SOCG, the Statement of Common Ground, was signed to install traffic lights, which forms part of the planning documentation for the new development southwest of the rail bridge. Now, there's lots of things you can say about this particular document. You could say there's all sorts of things about who authorised it, how it was produced, why were councillors not asked to look at it, and so on and so on and so on. And you can go on and on and on about it, which people in my group do from time to time. And there are issues that will need to be addressed at some point if we actually cannot move forward from this particular problem. But we do need to move forward, and we need to move forward as councillors, residents and everybody else. And it became very clear to me after the February meeting that never was, that it was in everybody's interest to recognise that we needed to provide a means for looking at other working solutions, which we could then use to influence the developer to provide a scheme which would not damage the residents and the community of Marske. The Borough Council and I kept in contact after the meeting, and during an exchange of emails it was suggested we come up with a form of words which could then be fleshed out as a way of moving forward. We had a meeting with Councillor Sue Jeffrey in February, and we agreed a joint statement which basically is 3 simple sentences. And these are that the proposed traffic light scheme was not the Council's preferred option, but does form part of the planning permission which was approved on appeal by the Secretary of State. Now that's a fact. No getting away from it. That is a plain fact. The next sentence says, in view of the strength of public opinion, that's people here like yourselves, against the scheme, it is clear that there is a case for examining other workable solutions. Now I think that's another fact as well. The third sentence says that the Council commits to providing full support to any future lobbying of landowners, developers or builders by residents to secure agreement to any revised scheme before works are to be implemented. That's an aspiration actually, but it needs to become a fact. And in order to make that third sentence a reality, we agreed with Councillor Jeffrey at the same meeting in February that a way to support the aims of the statement was to ensure a framework was created for future discussions in the shape of a working party of residents and council members stroke officers with a list of objectives or targets and a clear strategy. The working party would meet on a regular basis, with the first meeting on or around 10th of April, sometime in the beginning of April 2018. And we said that any deliberations with third parties, which are developers or whatever, would have to be with council officers or members present. We were also asked, again by RCBC, by Rector Borough Council, to sound out residents on their ideas about different solutions other than traffic lights. Well, we did that, and I put forward a list of alternate working solutions and asked people to give their opinion or to make a choice. There's an A4 document with you somewhere down there which actually lists out of these choices, and it's worth a quick glance. As of last night, we had over 700 responses. The most popular choices were either to build a new footbridge across the rail line, or to have access under the bridge by means of pedestrian-controlled lights. The options were option 1 to replace the old bridge, which has got a lot going for it actually, because if you replace the old bridge, you can basically make it a lot wider than what it is at the moment and put as many footpaths in as you want. But unfortunately, only about 5% of people actually supported that particular idea. The second option was a pedestrian tunnel or a subway, which I think was Redcar and Cleveland Borough Council's preferred option, and only 11% of people asked for that. The railway footbridge, with 28% of people asked for that. The traffic lights, which is the scheme under proposal, which basically we think we've got enough evidence to say it will not work. Only 3% of people said they were in favour of it. And then I had two options, which were basically mostly to do with pedestrian controlled access under the bridge by means of pedestrian controlled lights, so that people can walk backwards and forwards under the bridge on demand by pressing a button. So it's not traffic lights, but it's pedestrian controlled access. We can do it in a variety of ways. And those two options together, one was 22% and the other was 24%. So in other words, you've got a combined total of 46%. Option 7 was to leave things as they are, and basically 7% said that they would leave things as they are. So what the simple message really from the January and February survey and from the exercise with the alternative solutions is that the community of Marske does not want to accept a narrowing of the road at the bridge of the A185. What needs to come from our discussions tonight, in my opinion, which is basically what I'm doing here, is an acceptance by the community and our elected representatives of the joint statement that basically we produced. And that should be underpinned by a common understanding that the installation of traffic lights north and south of the rail bridge from the A1085 to control one-way traffic as a result of the narrowing of the road at this point because of an extension of the existing footpath on the eastern side of the A105 is not an option which is acceptable. This campaign has been an education to myself. As far as every time I've engaged with members of the public, I've been impressed with their thoughtful comments on the problems facing the community. They have embraced the opportunity for discussion, they wish to be involved in the process, and that provides an opportunity for us all, residents and politicians alike. There is a disconnect between politicians and the communities they serve. This cannot go on. Solutions cannot be imposed from above. Government, whether it's local or national, does not have the right to impose on communities. Residents and government have to engage with issues. They need to be discussed. There is a term called localism, which is a buzzword in political surveys. When you read the preface to it in plain English, written by Greg Clark, basically what it was designed to prevent people being dumped and imposed upon by government. What that means is that people can control the way their community is governed. If that is not just a form of words, then it means that bad decisions which damage communities can be challenged and overturned. Tonight, you have your chance to use your voice, and we will all be well advised to listen carefully. I hope that at the end of the meeting, we could all come together in an agreement to follow through on the lines suggested by the joint statements. You're going to hear next from borough councillors, and I would like them to say that they stand shoulder to shoulder with residents on this matter, and that they make a commitment to the residents of Marske that no effort will be spared to ensure that the road will not be reduced to single carriageway width under the railway bridge. This commitment is essential if we are going to move forward. I would like to think that people of Marske will also endorse the aims of the joint statement, and I would also like to believe that jointly we say no traffic on Marske High Street. We're a community with good, strong values, and we have the right to defend our community from harm, which is why I believe we are all here tonight. So let's recognise that, let's do something about it, and thank you very much for coming here tonight. Let's go.
As is the time-honoured way of doing things with regard to planning, each council will be given 3 minutes to put forward their views on what they've heard and any views they've brought with them with regard to the traffic lights and the system that indicated in the transport plan. I'm trying very hard to make sure everybody, not just the councillors, we keep this focused on the issue around the potential traffic lights going in. There's no point discussing the development or anything of that else, because that comes again in a different format. This is the key thing, the roadways. So I'll start with Councillor Turner. You have... you are?
Yeah.
Oh, in which case I'll start with Councillor. She's going to read a statement from all of them, apparently.
Yeah, thank you. We thought we'd do a joint statement to save time and give residents more chance to speak, so we're just going to do a brief statement on behalf of all the ward councillors for both St Germains and Longbeck. Can I start by saying that we're here to listen to the views of all residents, advise you of the current position, and although it is a slight bit of history, advise what's been done thus far in pursuit of an alternative and more acceptable outcome for everyone who lives in or passes through Marske. There are officers in attendance this evening. You can also email Liz at any time, or any of you ward councillors, and they're open to listen to alternative things. As we all know, the Secretary of State overturned the Council's rejection of planning permission despite both residents and ward councillors opposing the proposed development and traffic control proposals, both verbally at the appeal and in writing beforehand. Former Councillor Mike Finley and I submitted a motion to full council to ensure that local councillors are consulted before any major changes to highways or physical infrastructure take place in the future, and this was passed. We must now look at what we can do going forward rather than what is not legally possible, as this can now not be overturned. When looking at what could be done, I spent several months chasing the current landowner owners, the West Midlands Pension Fund, via post, email and telephone. I eventually reached them, and when they declined my offer to meet in person, I arranged a conference call which myself and Councillor Finley attended. During this call we expressed our own and residents and businesses' concerns should these plans go ahead about the devastating effect this could possibly have on the village of Marske. Although we had assurances that they felt it would not cause the problems we outlined, we explained that between us we'd lived here for almost a century, and they did then appear to alternative suggestions if they were viable and safe in their opinion. Any plans submitted will also go through a safety audit process via an independent body. At this time, several months ago, and after being contacted by someone who had been involved with the appeal from the very beginning many years ago, I also submitted a suggestion about keeping two-way traffic and installing a push button on either side of the bridge. I have seen this suggested many more times recently by different people, and it does appear to be a popular option. The West Midlands Pension Fund did not dismiss this suggestion out of hand, and I see having opened up negotiations with them as a positive step. Although it's unlikely any work will start within the next 2 years, they have agreed to copy us in on any reserved matters applications where final details of the planning stages are agreed, so we can consult with officers and make our views heard. When this happens, consultation will be as per all planning applications, and decisions will probably be via a committee. The council officers have also replied to former Councillor Finley's email saying that they are open to discussion on this issue with a willing applicant or developer, as well as with the following details. I won't read them all, but basically there's no reserved matters applications on the table at the moment for us to look at. If any don't come in within the next 2 years, then there will be no development until a new housing application goes in. All of you ward councillors will continue to closely monitor any applications with regards to this development, and especially changes to the highways, and will keep you informed of any plans as soon as we can. This statement was also written before the last meeting and the joint statement between the other things. Thank you.
Oh, I'm on time, well done. Councillor Jeffrey, you have 2 minutes.
I've got 3 minutes, and I'm not sure I'm going to use 3 minutes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Councillor Sue Jeffrey. I'm leader of Redcar and Cleveland Council. And can I first of all thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. I really haven't got very much to say over and above what Peter has said. I met Peter, Helen and Alistair on a number of occasions, Alistair only once actually, to talk about the problem, and it became blatantly obvious to me straight away that what we needed to do here was work together to come to a joint solution. All of you have been mobilised because you care sufficiently about the town and where you live to try and ensure that this particular traffic scheme does not go ahead. As a council, it was not our preferred option, and we very much want to work with you to find an alternative solution. So that's why we're here today, to listen to you, to listen to your views, to hear what you think about in terms of alternatives, and to work with you to make sure that we lobby the developer to try and get that alternative accepted. I mean, the fact is that the developer, when they come, if they come, will need to have a long-term relationship with you, the people of Marske. And in having a long-term relationship with you, the people of Marske, they will need to work with you. So that is your starting point, that is your very strong hand, and that is the one that we're going to help you play. And I hope we can find some solutions that actually work. Thank you.
Just picking up on that point, you've made a commitment to supporting the community of Marske. Is that a council commitment, or is it your personal commitment? Because a resident's written in saying they haven't seen anything like that in the council committee papers. There is a commitment by the council to support the residents of Marske. Is it a commitment from yourself, or is it a commitment from the council itself?
Well, you'll be aware that we operate what's the word? A sort of collective responsibility when it comes to making decisions in the council. So your councillors who are sat on my left here and myself as part of the ruling group on the council, we need to work together to come to conclusions and make decisions and decide how we're going to act. If we collectively decide that this is something that we would want to support, then we will do that. And what I'm saying to you is that is something we want to support, and that's what we'll do.
Sorry, I didn't quite get that. Is the council committed to it?
Yes.
Yes. So I'm just thinking next year there's an election. Heaven forbid you didn't get re-elected. Your commitment goes with you and should apply to other councils. The resident asked, it hadn't been put through council channels properly, so that the council's committed. I understand your commitment, and that's what we want, but the residents are asking, is the council?
I have an idea. Can I suggest that one of the ward councillors asks a question at the next full council meeting, does the council support this matter? And then it will go on record when I answer yes.
Right, having got that commitment, some of your questions no longer apply, I'm afraid.
Sorry.
That's all right. I'll start with Keith Simpson. Did you want to ask your question yourself, or would you like me? If you stand up, somebody will come to you with a microphone. You have to wait there, somebody will come in with here she comes. Just so everybody can hear you. Now this question was very similar to a question by Heather Hodges and a couple of other people as well.
Yeah, my question regarded option 1 of the thing, which is remove and replace the railway bridge over the road with a bigger one, which is very much, I have to agree, the Rolls-Royce solution of it all. But one thing that comes to my mind is that the railway over this bridge is virtually the sole exit for the output from Woolby Potash Mine and the sole input for Skinning Grove rolling mills. Is it going to be possible, should this option go forward, to get that bridge replaced during the fortnight summer shutdown? Because that's about the only window there is. And while I've been thinking, so we're talking, sitting there since I put the question to you, one other point has come to mind is that the railway industry has some access for all funds, which if a fully accessible footbridge was supplied over the station, there may be some funding which could be tagged on from that. It's the same sort of fund that the lifts were put in at Middlesbrough Station from.
Thank you very much for that, Keith. Councillor Stone, would you like to answer that? Or put any input into it at all?
Yeah, no problem. You're dead right, that would be the Rolls-Royce solution. For exactly the reasons you've highlighted, it won't happen. it was something that we brought up at the appeal. We talked about it at length. Network Rail would never agree to close that line for the amount of time it would take to do that bridge. And in my mind, the disruption that would cause to Marske itself, whilst that work was ongoing, wouldn't really be a price worth paying. So I think there's some fantastic solutions on there, and I'm carrying a pedestrian crossing on there is probably an option that we need to look at. I would love to see a footbridge go over it, a proper footbridge go over it. I really can't see us getting that bridge changed. And you know what, I've been here a long time, part of me doesn't want to see it changed. It's part of what makes Marske what Marske is. So let's keep it that way and let's work for a solution around it.
Thank you for that. Councillor Coonan, would you like to add anything or nothing? No?
Well, no, I agree with what Steve said. I mean, we have been down all these different paths, and we went down at the inquiry. Those of you who were there and put your views at that time will know what was said. I mean, we said everything, you know, to go against it, and I went on about the flooding on Monday. And, you know, we still didn't think there was adequate provision for the water that runs down fields, but we've got nowhere with that either. So we can only look to the future and keep on and on about the things that make us, we feel, a problem.
Thank you. Councillor Ryder, you were elected, what was it, yesterday, the day before?
So I'm an expert on this. So I'll just
pull that microphone forward.
leave that to Councillor Jeffries, I think. I'll just leave that to her.
Right, thank you very much. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I really don't have anything to add to what's been said, but I just believe...
Pull the microphone towards you. That's better.
I really don't have anything to add to what's been said, but I just want to say that I think the most prohibitive part of this idea is the cost. Now, whether the Network Rail are part of the Access Fund, or the Access Fund is a different company altogether, if it is a different company from Network Rail, then I do think we should pursue that route, just to see if there are any funds to go to the 6 million it will cost. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jeffrey.
I think discussing the options is what the working party needs to do. We need to look at all the options. I think we see the estimate there, 6 million plus. I don't know the details of the costings for this particular thing, but I think we have to be realistic, and it's very unlikely we're going to get anybody to invest £6 million in a new bridge, even if that was the right way forward. But I think at this stage in the thing, I wouldn't take anything off the table. I think you've got to keep everything on the table, have a look at them, use your working group, work through the options. You just don't know what's going to come out of anything when you start discussing them. So keep all 7 on the table, work through them, and let's see where we get to. I wouldn't include or exclude anything at this point. Sorry, I wouldn't exclude anything at this point. But I do think the realistic answer, you're not going to find £6 million for a new bridge. But, you know.
I think that answers, is it Mr. or Miss Wilson's question, which was quite straightforward, who's paying?
Yeah. I mean, I think, just saying that, I mean, I think the who's paying is a really interesting issue. I mean, the public sector, so be that the council or the combined authority or the government, will pay for stuff called enabling infrastructure if it allows development to go ahead. But in this instance, there is no money specifically earmarked for that, so it would have to come out of either developers' pockets, and in that case adds to development costs, or, you know, it would have to come out of local funding, I suppose, or possibly into the combined authority. I think, well, again, all those things would need to be looked at as part of what this working group is going to do. There are options, but I personally feel, you know, if somebody's going to come into your community, build all these houses, you need to hold their feet to the fire, and you need to say to them, if you want to have a partnership with this community, then you've got to develop infrastructure that works for us and our community, and therefore you need to put your hand in your pockets and fund some of this.
I'm assuming that holding their feet to the fire will be done by the council as well as just the residents.
Whatever solution we come up with, at this point, we have committed to working with you to try and convince the developers to adopt, yes.
Tristan Leroy's got a question. Is he still here? No? He was asking, can somebody explain what the S106 monies are for? Now, I was stopped earlier on. Somebody asked me earlier on about that. Is anybody prepared or able to explain what S106 is? Councillor Turner's going to have a go.
It's a really complicated subject. Broadly speaking, every time, or nearly every time, a developer agrees to build something within Redcar and Cleveland Council, they come to an agreement whereby they will facilitate and pay for or give money to the council for certain bits of infrastructure. I would need to see, in fact I'm not even sure there is a full 106 agreement attached to this as we stand, but I would need to see the details of that to see what it is. I think the gentleman down here was mentioned, should we have already asked the developer to pay for that? The costs for their preferred solution is within those things. That's not what we want, which is why Councillor Jeffrey is exactly right. We should be going back to them and saying, look, you need the support of the people of Marske. The new businesses you're going to put on there, whether that's a drive-through, a petrol station, whatever, need the support of the people of Marske for them to do that. But in terms of the 106 monies, it will literally be, there'll be money in there for school funding. I think I asked a question the other day at scrutiny about whether, I think it's something like £2,700 per child they've allocated to the educational infrastructure. As it stands, we're not sure whether that goes towards a new school, which will build, which could be 10, 15 years away, or whether that goes towards local schools. But that's the type of thing we would get into an agreement with once we know who the developer is and once we start talking to them. But 106 is basically money that comes to us for certain things to help make sure that the residents aren't unduly affected in terms of services for the area in which the development's going to go.
Yeah. Can I just quickly say something quickly?
If you stand up and get a microphone to you.
Yeah.
I'm being a bit cheeky here because I know there is a 106 agreement, which is section 106 of the housing plan agreement. I know there's one attached to this because I helped. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. My name's Dave Jones, and all I want to say is under section 106. I did look at that some months ago, about last September, and under section 106 there is an amount of money that's been identified just simply for work to be carried out on the bridge, and it's £2,000.
Before Councillor Jeffrey goes on, some of you may know I actually represented the parish council, which includes you all, at the inquiry, trying to defend our position at the inquiry. One of the things I did secure, should we lose our objection, which we clearly have, that £25,000 will be given by the developers to Marske Community Centre. So every cloud has a small line, but I think Councillor Jeffrey is bursting at the seams because she's got it here written. So if you're going to...
I have a summary of the 106 agreement here, which I'll just tell you. So the transport elements are improved public rights of way, £12,000. Cycle parking provision at the station halt contribution, which I presume is what Dave's talking about, £2,000. Level crossing contribution to improve safety operation, £2,000. And then the traffic regulation order, which costs £3,000. In addition to that, provision is made subject to various triggers, so that means when so many houses are built, for 15% affordable housing, the provision of a new primary school within a 10-year period, and that will give a contribution of £2,642 for every dwelling that's built. Community facilities, a contribution of £111 per dwelling that's built, and then the leisure contribution, which you've just mentioned, John, of £25,000. So that's 106. Summary.
Thank you. The other bit is that there's over £100,000 going to the leisure centre in Saltburn. A question from Jennifer Jarvis. Sorry? can do it. Yeah, by all means, I'll do it for you, Jennifer, no problems at all. Her question is, why is access via Longbeck never discussed? Children would be safer walking that way. Anybody able to take that on? But no, she's just discussing why it's never ever mentioned, why Longbeck Road's never mentioned. I can explain that.
I was going to say, did you ask that question?
Can I answer? Yeah, I can answer it. One of the key reasons for that Longbeck's not mentioned is that the development itself will start from Longbeck Road. The first part of the development will be on the Longbeck Road side, down by the level crossing. Probably the wettest part of the field, actually. But don't panic. They made a commitment and a direction from the Secretary of State is that they have to show the council that they've contained or curtailed the flooding issue before they can build the houses. So there's going to be a lot of heavy vehicles going up and down that road, which is probably why it's not actually included as part of it. And of course, it doesn't take you into the centre of the village, which is one of the things. For the schools, yeah, I agree completely, it's a more secure route, but it won't be for about 14 years, because over a 14-year period, a lot of heavy vehicles are going to be coming and going up and down Longbeck. They may well be. So that's the reason that Longbeck's not really discussed. And of course it's not been blocked off. Oh, we've got another Jarvis. Is that the same person? You have two questions. Oh, it was you. You want me to ask you? Why don't they do a one-way system set up for 1 week to test it? Is there a legal reason on that? Councillor Karen?
I did actually request a temporary, Mr Finlinson asked me, and until the Reserved Matters application are on the table with the plans, officers said that was not available because they don't know what plans are going to be submitted. So once the plans are submitted, the Reserved Matters, that is something we'll certainly be putting pressure to make sure that that happens.
Chair, I would suggest you don't want to test a solution you don't want. So why would you want to do it? I think we should concentrate our efforts on coming up with an alternative solution and put all our efforts behind that.
Thank you for that. Mr. Andrew Fox has a question.
I think it's been answered, actually.
You think it's been answered? I'll just read out what your question was, which you think has been answered. Will planning permission be needed for the traffic light and footpath? We think that's been answered. Yeah, that's been answered. Right, we'll move on to another subject. Mike Kirkbright.
Yeah, just read it out.
Sorry. Thinking positive, the campaign needs to be a success. Do you know of any other campaigns elsewhere in the country which have been successful? What tips, strategies do we need to use in the future to stop the lights? So, any the wiser? Does anybody know of any other campaigns against traffic alterations? How about somebody in the audience? Anybody come across that? No? Well, the answer to that is we don't know. But I'm fairly sure we will look into it now. It's a good point to bring up, thank you. Susan Bibby. Pop your hand up. Oh, there you go. You want me to ask it? Fine, okay. You're getting off light, yeah. Has work already started as there is a patch of fresh tarmac at the site? Anybody the wiser?
The latest information I have is there is not even a developer identified for that site yet. And if there was a developer identified for that site, they couldn't start work straight away because they have to deal with the reserve planning matters first. That will take at least 6 months. So you will know about it plenty of time in advance when work is about to start on the site. What the tarmac is for, I don't know.
I can see a lot of confused. I can see a lot of confused faces when the term reserved matters is mentioned. Effectively, we have a plot of land. What's been granted is what's called outline planning permission, which says you have permission to build things in here. That's where we're at. What goes in there is yet to be agreed. That's what they call reserved matters. So they've got a field with planning permission to build things in it. That's all they have at the moment until they come back to the planning department, submit their planning applications for what they want to put in there. Is that any clearer to people? Does it make more sense? Nodding heads is a good there. We have 2 questions about the same thing. Somebody didn't put their name down, so Mr. Briggs or Biggs, it's down to you. There we are. Can I get a microphone to you? I don't want to waste your question. It's a very good one.
It's just the access, which is possibly being answered when they say no traffic lights. Well, there's a bus stop right on the same side as the top house. Now, if you would have the traffic light control, that bus, would, even though it's a lay-by, would still hinder traffic coming into Marske from Saltburn or these new estates. I know we're all against the traffic light, but if the worst came to worst, they did put traffic lights up, you'd have another problem with the bus. If they're going to move the bus stop, where are they going to put it on the high street? Because it's a long way to walk to past Sainsbury's, pick a bus for old age pensions, or anybody who wants a bus.
Thank you. Thank you. Somebody puts somebody else has put, will there be 2 bus stops in laybys? So basically the question is, I see the engineers down front here going, but they can't talk, they're not allowed to talk until afterwards, and you talk to them. There is an explanation in this document, which is available, and should be available in the library. And it's the transport plan that goes with this planning application and goes, this document actually that was signed off. It includes the traffic lights. Now, it's a public document, you can get access to it, and I do believe it's on the website as well, so you can look at it on the web. And that will tell you where they intend to put bus stops and things, or an outline of where they intend to put them. But again, it's all up for discussion, and everybody needs to talk about it. Go ahead.
Just to add to that, obviously things like bus stops and the location, that sort of thing, is all evidence that you will be able to put in your case for why you don't want that particular option to go ahead. So the more about this we know, the more ideas that you have about why it shouldn't go ahead, the better, and that can all be collated and put into the case.
Thank you. I've got Sam Whitlock. Sam Whitlock? No? Oh, there he is. No, it's not him. Another question. Right. Okay, we'll move on. Susan Robinson.
What do you ask?
By all means. If the traffic lights go ahead, what will be done about the air pollution in the high street? It's bad enough now. Now, I know that is not in Stockholm. So, anybody got any ideas of what might happen? What would you like to see happening? Let's make it more positive.
I think I'm talking about them too, because I'm currently working with some residents on Rectory Lane in Gisborne about the exact same thing, with the amount of increased traffic on there. And what they're doing on there is there's a year-long survey to see what the increase in CO2 is, and it sounds technical, but it is literally a little jar stuck on the side of a lamppost in a building. And that effectively they tell me he's going to see what the increase in carbon emissions are from Rectory Lane. You're dead right, it is likely to cause an increase. What I would love to see is the traffic lights not there in the first place. I think that's a perfectly sensible route for us all to take, and with the support of Councillor Jeffrey, my fellow councillors, we will get support. When we ask Councillor Jeffrey that question, we will get support of the full council to put the weight of the full council behind the residents of Marske to say we don't want those traffic lights, and it would be in the best interest of the developer to work with us on that. So I don't think we'll get to that, but I'll come back in 12 months' time and tell you what the results of Rectory Lane are.
Thanks, Rick. Anybody else? Yes, well, it's Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I just would like to add that the council actually monitors emissions constantly. The Environmental Health Department have equipment and people going out. So any changes in emissions is looked at and hopefully identified and solutions found. So it's not a new thing, emissions monitoring, it goes on all the time.
Thank you, Councillor.
Just ask a question. Have we done any in Marske Street yet on emissions? If we're going to go the road.
Can you use the microphone? People can't hear.
It's just to carry on from that question. It's no good doing the emission tests after, if we go that way. Surely it would be ideal to do an emission test now before we get any traffic lights, anything, and then afterwards we can test them again.
Well, that's possible, but we are directed by central government.
Pull it closer.
We are directed by central government to carry out this emission testing. So it would happen anyway, whether we ask for it or not. So yes, it is going on, and it will be going on. You don't see the equipment. Some of it is really invisible, but I can assure you that it does happen.
All I'm saying is, so we should have some form of what the emissions are now, actually, before we have to go this way.
But we can't compare, can we, until and if the development goes
beforehand, and then we can have it to check.
I think. And if we do monitor it, as we automatically do. If we do monitor it as we automatically do, then something will. If the development goes ahead and the traffic is increased and emissions are increased and there is a problem, then the problem will be resolved. But until that happens,
just let her answer, please.
We can't foresee the future.
But you can do an emission test now before any of this comes off. Then you have some information to use if it has to go the other way.
Okay, Councillor.
Yeah, I think in answer to your question, Margaret's dead right. This goes on all the time, this monitoring goes on. So in answer to your question, yes, there will be a baseline that we can work from to see if there is an increase in emissions. We will have that data.
That's all I was asking, thank you.
Can I ask if do you test for CO2?
Can you wait 1 second? Can I get a microphone to the chap in front of you? Stand up or put your hand up so she can find you. And I'll get that chap off. No, up the front of you, the chap here. Put your hand up there.
Hello, are you testing for CO2 on these emissions tests on I
can't answer that because I'm not an environmental health officer. But there will be somewhere it'll be recorded, and I feel sure that it will be.
It's just that it's just like petrol cars. People seem to be more aware of like CO2, built up in the area, for the ozone layer, but it's diesel cars. They don't produce as much CO2. They produce nitrous oxide, which is more detrimental to the air that we actually breathe. So, what are we actually testing for? CO2 or nitrous oxide?
I mean, it's not an aside, but this isn't really the issue here, is it?
It is, because it's pollution, isn't it? It's pollution. It's pollution.
The issue is, are we monitoring pollution? Which
Yeah.
I'm just saying that we are. I don't know exactly what we monitor, because I'm not an environmental health officer. But I can assure that all the emissions that you discussed will be monitored, because the government, central government, ask for the details.
I think in my joint statement I did say that we wouldn't have answers to technical questions. We're not developers, we're not environmental health officers. So if you do have a question that we can only guess at, you know, we don't want to give you the wrong answers, please send it through via email. We'll get the relevant officers to give you the exact correct information, rather than us trying to second guess and give you information because we're just guessing. So please send it through to one of your local councillors' email addresses and we'll get back to you with that correct answer.
My concern was when you have these surveys, you know, for emissions and they're like, they basically say, oh yeah, okay, well, the CO2 levels are actually okay or whatever, you know, so people think, oh yeah, okay, so it's not too bad, so you know the air that we breathe. But then these other hidden gases, which are the more dangerous to the actual air that we breathe in directly, they're not really highlighted so much. So I just wanted to know, to make sure that, you know, these surveys were covered.
I'll find out. If you can send me an email with the exact information you want, I'll approach officers and get them answers for you to the best of my ability.
Thank you. I will say this, if the council is testing, which I do believe they are, they will be a public record which you can access anyway. I'm sure Councillor King or any of the other ward councillors will be happy to help you get that. The gentleman back there with his hand in the air, then the gentleman here with the very fetching orange car scarf.
I was one of the 7% that Peter Finlinson mentioned that said do nothing. And I think what Paul Cawthorne said sort of bore that out in a way in finding a peak of about 3 pedestrians going under the bridge during rush hour. It may increase to as much as double figures, I suppose, when the new houses go up. But I think the solution is obvious, not traffic lights, but with regard to the safety of the extra pedestrians, if there are any, to have pedestrian-controlled traffic lights, which will be just a temporary halt and does away with all this pollution business, all the things we've been talking about up to now.
I think for that, I think Councillor King's already said she's proffered that, and it hasn't been knocked back, it hasn't been agreed yet, so that would appear to be having some resonance. Can you come down the front here, the chap down here with the very fetching university scarf on? Yeah, that one.
Yeah, you hand it back, thank you.
Brief is exactly, sir.
That's a question, so make a statement. I'm Jim Bingham, I'm a parish councillor, but I'm also chair of the local council associations. And tomorrow I'm attending Parliament on the National Lobby Day. So if I can have 5 or 6 packs, I've seen MPs, local MPs, so I can pass that on and lobby. And to answer your first question about how things are being changed, Scotland did the same thing quite successfully about the parking.
Thank you very much. Talking of MPs, I've been quiet with this. There's been laid about some copies of a statement from our local MP, Councillor Turley. I'll just paraphrase some of her things. Firstly, she would like to pass on her sincere apologies for not being here tonight. She had committed to come, but was unfortunately detained at, that's the wrong word really these days. She's committed to a vote in the House of Commons this evening. She is saying that I am fully behind Marske residents in their campaign to oppose this. At best, poor traffic proposal. People of Marske are rightly concerned, and I believe any change to the current free-flowing traffic under the railway bridge would lead to a negative effect on Marske and people who live there. She goes on as further things, there's plenty of copies knocked around, but I think that gives the gist of your local MP, alongside the council, we should have a chance of making a bit of a storm. Got more questions given to me now than we were at the beginning. Right, I know. Mrs. Hutton, do you want me to read it or do you want a microphone?
I'll read it.
That's lovely.
Okay, my original question was, were the emergency services consulted That has been actually answered in the paperwork that we've received, but what I would like to know, and if we don't know the answer, perhaps the councillors could find out for us, is why weren't they consulted? Because with the delays that your traffic survey is talking about, there is a distinct possibility of danger to life for the residents of Marske, and I'd like to know what the emergency services think.
Thank you for that. Anybody? Have any of these councillors had a conversation with regard to?
As far as I know, the council under no legal obligation to consult with the emergency services at that time, but as I mentioned in the common statement, there will be an independent body doing a safety audit once the reserved matters are on the table. So there will be consultation once that happens, but for the statement of common ground, the council didn't have a legal obligation to consult because there's no matters on the table at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, but just to bring us back though, we need to remember that we're going to oppose this proposal, so we're not going to be in a position, hopefully, of having to consult the emergency services about it. But again, if we have evidence that shows that the emergency services will be held up by this plan, then that can be used as evidence when we go back to the developers. That's the crucial thing.
Can I just ask one more, well, a second part to that question, not from somebody else. The question is quite simply, why were the emergency services never consulted before this plan was submitted to the inquiry? Can anybody answer that? No? Right. So we can't answer. If you want to speak, please wait, I'll give a microphone to you.
I'm going to say, can I just say that can we be assured that the emergency services will be consulted before any work is undertaken around the bridge?
I think it's fair to say that the council will support that.
The whole point of having the working group is to be able to talk to all the people that we need to talk to about what the new proposal should be, and that's what we're going to do.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman down here, can you bring the microphone, please? Oh, you do, so some people can't hear you. I can't hear it, but neither can the council.
We'll get a bit old.
Speak for yourself. I am old.
Councillor King mentioned that there's no legal responsibility for emergency services. Surely there's a moral one.
I think, as I said, the crucial thing here is that we're talking about a new proposal, and we will make sure that all partners that need to be discussed, and particularly partners that you're concerned that we consult, are consulted in whatever new proposal happens.
Could I ask?
Yeah, 1 second.
This is basically following up from what's just been said. It's more to do with the council's decision-making process than anything else. We understand that council members were not made aware that the statement of common ground, which was signed in August 2006, actually included the proposals for traffic lights. And so when the document went to the appeal, it had already been signed away by the council. But reading through the constitution of the council, it says that it can be called in for consideration by the scrutiny committee. And one of them is if it has not been subject to due consultation. So why was it not called in if it breached what appears to be the council's constitution?
First of all, the call-in process applies to council reports, so it probably wouldn't apply in this process, in this instance. I stand corrected if that's wrong, but my understanding is the scrutiny call-in process, which is what we're talking about, probably wouldn't apply. The second thing is in relation to the statement of common ground. The statement of common ground, the way that that was drawn up, is bound by law. Within that, the transport statement, if that's what you call it, I'm not technical on these things, but the transport statement was the transport statement. There wasn't any grounds on which it couldn't be agreed as it stood. It was not the preferred option that we wanted to happen, but it was an option that was acceptable within the system. What that meant was we had no option but to allow it to go forward, and therefore the planning inquiry didn't look into that in any detail when we got to the inquiry. That is why we now need to stand together, and why we are standing together to try and find a different solution going forward. And that is the option that's only left open to us as well as to you. So we're doing that together with you, and that's what I think is going to make the biggest impact and make a difference.
Can I just clarify? Sorry. Yeah.
I mean, you're saying 1 minute shouldn't have been done, then you're saying...
Right, yeah, one second. The statement of common ground is one document. The transport assessment, which is this document, which carries the commitment to the traffic lights being in place. Now, I understand what you were saying. This was signed off by an officer who had no delegated powers to sign it off. Now, no, that's true, it's just true. Let me just clarify his question. Now, what he's saying is, that being the case, shouldn't it have been called back in once that was recognised? I believe that's what you were asking.
That is what I'm
That's what I thought you asked, yeah.
But more than that, before the decision was made, what Councillor Jeffrey continually saying is that it was not the council's chosen option, but it was the option they signed, amongst all the other options that were given. So there was an opportunity for the council to consult before that was signed, with the emergency services, with the residents, and with everybody else involved. Now, it's gone. I'm not, you know, there's no point in making any trouble on that. What I'm asking, really, is the council's decision-making process developed and improved since that time, so we will not be in that position again, where people who are going to be significantly affected across the spectrum are not going to be consulted when it matters.
Thank you for that. Councillor King?
I refer back to the joint statement that I made at the beginning. Myself and Councillor Finlay put a motion into full council immediately on finding out about this happening, and we got that loophole closed. So now any major changes to highways or physical infrastructure that take place in the future cannot go ahead without consultation. So unfortunately, this had happened, and that is what resulted in the motion going forward to make sure it doesn't happen again.
I don't want to go down the legal side of this because it's to a layperson, it's blatantly obvious it shouldn't do, but the council's where it is now. I mean, that statement that Councillor King just referred to was drafted with myself and several of the directors and Councillor Finlay directly after the inquiry, because I tried to raise the subject with a number of senior people in the council who didn't quite understand what had happened, because it's never actually happened before. I am aware that the senior planner has written that a document should have been signed by the officer who signed off on this document. He should have gained permission, he didn't. It was an oversight, and that statement is supposed to fill that hole. We are where we are with this. There's been mistakes. The council's put its hand up. It's prepared to work with everybody to try and change and improve the situation they find themselves in. One second, I'll get a microphone to you.
Yeah, please, thank you very much. There's a little matter of legal driving hours for heavy goods drivers, bus drivers, coach drivers, official breaks. Yeah. So why haven't the transport industry been consulted?
Very good question.
I'd like a very good answer and a solution.
We'll try. Has anybody got an answer for the gentleman? Anybody involved in transport? I'm next to
Sorry. Absolutely respect your experience and that and legal driving hours. I really fail to see what benefit that question would have to this meeting. We're talking about, we're talking about the fact that None of us want to see traffic lights. None of us want to see traffic backed up either side of that bridge going anywhere. If we're saying a driver's legal hours will be impacted by the fact that they may have to wait 60 seconds to get to a set of traffic lights, I really don't think, there'll be some really important questions out there, and with all due respect, I really don't think that's helping this meeting. Thank you.
The obstacle course from Saltburn to the car park on Cotham Road, yeah, and getting buses through there. Getting wagons through there alone. It doesn't put a minute on the flaming thing, it puts 20 minutes getting through red car.
Sorry, and every transport company I know will factor that in, and I stand by my original statement, I really don't see what help that's bringing.
Okay, I'll stop you there, because there's nobody here qualified to answer that question.
Well, it's funny enough, there's nobody qualified there to answer any question that's being put from this side of the
Well, I don't think that's a fair statement of what's going on this evening. Can we have the microphone to the gentleman in the back there? Gentleman, his hand up.
Can you tell me whether an impact study's been done on the Longbeck and Churchill Road, Churchill Drive? Because if this goes ahead, you can see what's going to happen straight away. They're going to use Longbeck and Churchill Drive as a shortcut.
Unfortunately, yes, they have. Again, this document contains all the surveys and all the information you could look at. Whether it's the answer, whether it's the right answers, I think you should look at yourself and make your own decision. I'm not going to influence on yet. But I found some of the information here. A bag of salt would be probably best.
Well, it's supposed to be residents only at the moment, but people use it as a drive-through anyway.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully we won't get that way and get that far, but it is something we can use in our argument going forward, and I appreciate that. And now I've got, was it you that put the written question about it? Yeah? We got it here, that will be taken to the working party to be addressed. All your questions will be taken to the working party. If I don't get through, don't worry. It just means that they'll go to the working party and those things will be addressed with the council. Yeah, by all means.
Just following on from that, we only have 2 routes directly into Marske from the A174. Obviously, the one down the High Street, which we're talking about specifically, and the other is down Longbeck Road. The Longbeck Road route isn't necessarily going to be your escape route, because, to my eyes, the width across the crossing doesn't actually currently have wide enough paths. So what you're going to do with the traffic, which is obviously heavy traffic going in and out of Longbeck Estate. Plus you've got the buses, that's a bus route, and it's a main route in and out every night for the flying squad, the ambulances and the police. So if there are going to be interruptions on that road as well, it's like a dual thing that we're going to be hit from both routes in. So you need a free-flowing route. You're going to have to decide which one it is.
Well, thank you for that. Anything else? No? Right. That was something we will take further working group, because I can't see any objections to that being addressed. I've got a lot of questions up here from people who are against it. Yes. Has anybody got the brass neck to actually admit that they're for it? I'd like to hear from anybody that would like to say they're for it. Now, gentleman here, the very brave man in the red jacket, wouldn't wear a hood, wouldn't rest it, you will stand out when they go outside. Fine. That gentleman there.
What I'd just like to talk about is the footbridge, because Network Rail have said that footbridge can't be used because it's not suitable. Can someone tell me what the difference is between one of the new residents on that 800 houses walking across that bridge with a pushchair and a railway passenger? Are Network Rail operating a bridge which is illegal? And anyway, in the future, with 800 houses there, Network Rail will want both platforms open and people will use that footbridge. So why not make that footbridge suitable? I think it is already. There's ramps, there's steps, people cross the railway line to go into Middlesbrough. That's the solution.
I'm going to answer that, but I do not want to turn this into a Brexit discussion. The reason the bridge isn't suitable is it doesn't meet EU specifications on anything. Whether we're in or out, I don't personally have well, not one I can mention. Currently, it doesn't meet EU regulations. If it's altered, it has to meet EU regulations, which means the angle has to be reduced. So therefore, the bridge has to be longer. That's my understanding of the argument put forward when the bridge was looked at initially. The gentleman put his hand up with the black jacket. That's it there. If you pass on. And somebody waving their hand back. Can I see you? Right, I've got you now.
Thanks. My name is Paul White. I live in Redcar, but I live near the seafront, and through Marske now en route to Saltburn, Whitby in particular. I go there very often. I really just want to go back to the figures that Mr. Cawthorne gave on the traffic survey, particularly the pedestrians. It's very, very, very low at the minute, and it seems like this is a huge undertaking for, at the moment, you might say 1,000 people. I do know in the future that when the new estate's there, you look at, you know, what are these people going to do? Well, the extra pedestrians are going to go to school, they're going to go shopping, they're also going to go to the train station, which I think really is linked to what the gentleman said before. I just scribbled a couple of things down, just as the meeting's going on. The two things that I see as the most vital things, that we need to keep all the pedestrians, not just in the future but now, completely separate from coming into contact with traffic on the 1085. And I don't think that's a new thing just because of the estate. It's been an ongoing sort of safety issue in Marske. And to do that, you've got to keep them on the development side of the 1085. I just scribbled down here until they're safely to the Zetland Hotel point. Now, if I'm not trying to sort of give sort of solutions here, but there is a real way. There's a bridge already there, albeit it's not fit for purpose. But surely that's a far cheaper, safer option. We don't need traffic lights. We don't need any traffic flow impediments or anything. The other thing is that, again, Peter, I'm guessing in the background you've done a lot of research, possibly thinking about what future pedestrians are going to be doing. If you talk about school kids, the only secondary school in Marske at the minute is this one, which is again on the development side of the bridge. So again, it doesn't make sense to send everybody across to the other side to come down to then have to come back again. They can make the decisions once they get into Marske. So I think that the point I'm making is I think there's lots of reasons why not. There's definitely solutions, cheaper solutions, and I think the way forward now is to, as you say with your subgroup or whatever, is to now get the positive reasons why some of the other solutions are acceptable. And I think, we've done all the meetings, and I think it's fantastic, to be honest, that it's such a turnout. It's been really well attended and well regulated, so thanks for that. But I really do think now it's just a time of getting our heads around the table and getting the detail into, if you like, to match and supersede the developers. And I don't see why that can't be done, in a short period of time.
Thank you very much. Just to say you live in Redcar. You're going to join the working group here. Leading on from what you said, I've got a question here from Arthur Barron, is it? Arthur Brown? It's you. Do you want me to read it out? I'll read this one. Can the tunnel that already exists under the bridge, near the main bridge, be used? He didn't draw a diagram. Apparently there is another underpass under the railway to the right of the existing bridge. Is anybody the wiser?
Yes, there is.
Somebody want to put the hand there? The gentleman there. The microphone. What happened to the microphone? Oh, there you are.
I can only say when I was a teenager, but there's definitely another tunnel at the right hand side of the bridge. In fact, on many occasions as a teenager, I tried to look inside it to see how far it went through. There's two rather large doors, easy about, well, I perceive about between 8 to 10 feet tall.
Right.
And there was an old dam there as well.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. There's the microphone. That gives us something else to look at. Yeah. Find out who that belongs to. Thank you for that. One second. It's a chap in front here. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just very quickly, that existing tunnel is something that we've already investigated from the MP's office. I'm led to believe it backs onto someone's garden, so that wouldn't be a viable option because there simply isn't space for any sort of infrastructure.
You always get somebody, don't you? You always get somebody who ruins a great idea.
Sorry, we investigate.
Yeah. Right, anybody else with a question? The gentleman there in the middle of the aisle. No, you've been once. The gentleman back there, please, with glasses.
There is a railway station next to the development.
Yep.
I should imagine a lot of the people on the new development who want to use that railway station to go to Middlesbrough, Redcar, down to Mundles.
And so
to get to the railway station under this proposed situation, they will have to cross over the A1085, walk down the bridge, underneath the bridge, or Meadow Road, to the pedestrian crossing, back over the road at the top house, up the bank to platform 2, then over the footbridge to platform 1. Would it not be easier to open an access from the development onto platform 1?
That's very, very well put, and I shall use that. Thank you very much. More questions coming in. Has anybody else got a question on anything you've heard so far this evening? Right. Now, this lady here. Questions from the floor.
Firstly, where we used to live in West Yorkshire, they said they'd build a roundabout and then they'd get rid of it, so they got rid of it. So then they said there wouldn't be any more traffic. So then where we lived, it became a rat run, which was like at the side. We now live on Meadow Road, or just off. We are really afraid, that my mother and I, that it will become a rat run, like we did in West Yorkshire where we lived, but they assured us before it wouldn't, but it did. The second thing is, perhaps I'm a bit thick, why does a would-be developer, whoever they are, if you don't know who they are, have such power to devastate a community? And who are they? Why have they got this power? And why can they suddenly hold us to ransom?
Thank you for the question. Just very quickly, because I'll save the councillors a bit of time. There isn't a developer at the moment. What actually happens, the landowner has held you to ransom. They sold, or want to sell the land, but to get more money, they have applied for planning permission. So it's the actual property owner or landowners that have got the power at the moment. Anything after this is yet to be agreed and yet to go through. As it's been said several times tonight, the council is going to pass a question to allow the council to support the residents of Marske to prevent the traffic lights. So hopefully the dynamic will shift back to residents. Councillor Turner, you want to say something?
Yeah, I asked exactly that question of the engineer for the orders, and I said we put it up on a map and I highlighted the fact that people will use that as a route. You are absolutely right, they will use that as a route. If there's a congestion down in the village and you want to go up Windy Lane, you will go that way. Right. and that was raised in the appeal. Literally 99% of the questions you've asked tonight, myself, Karen, Nora, Margaret, John, we were all there. We all asked those questions at the appeal. None of us wanted this to go ahead for reasons like that. None of us want these traffic lights to go ahead. And every single one of us is committed here tonight to supporting the residents, and the stuff Peter's done in bringing this meeting together is brilliant. We will, if we're still here, be absolutely behind what you're trying to do here, because it's the right thing to do.
Somebody called Sean has put a question forward. The chap at the back, where's your microphone? He wants me to ask it. All right. It is clear from a Freedom of Information request that the highways engineer who signed the statement of common ground had no authority to do so. Would the councillors agree that this renders the traffic light element of that statement of common ground invalid, and therefore that the alternative must be, can't read that last word, I'm afraid. Found, must be found. Yeah. Well, I think we'll agree to that. Yeah. One thing I would say, that the statement of common ground included the transport assessment, which is the bit was signed by the engineer, not the whole of the statement of common ground. That was not signed by the engineer at all. He signed the traffic assessment, which was the fundamental part that's got us where we are today. Right. I think we're running out of questions. It's getting late. Oh, hello, the hands are all up all of a sudden now. The gentleman behind the... right, we'll go to you, then come to you.
Hello. Sorry. Can I just draw everybody's attention to the display on the right at the front? I'm sure Peter would like me to. People aren't very keen on putting their hands in the pockets, and I'm sure this needs to be supported. Will you please do that? Thank you.
Gentleman with the glasses behind the cameraman. See you get that on camera.
Yeah. Face him or face you? Just to go back to the Longbeck crossing, you said that the couldn't consider because of 14 years of heavy traffic for construction to the new site. Why is that traffic not coming off the 174 as part of the new development?
You mean the 1085?
No, the 174.
Right, the 174, yeah. It comes through the 174 to the roundabout at Longbeck, and it comes down Longbeck, and there'll be two entrances put in on Longbeck Road. One for the equipment and storage units, and one which will go into the middle of the field for the first two phases of the development. Phase 3 and 4 are on the 1085 side, and the road will then be extended to join the 1085. The idea is they will use the Longbeck Road because it's classed as an unclassified road. The 1085, as we know, is an A road, as Peter, I believe, mentioned earlier. It is part of the primary arterial roads within the area, so it can't be used for feeding the site. Plus, of course, they intend to start building on that side first, down by the level crossing, and then further back up towards the 174, and then across, leaving a space in the middle where the community elements of the development will be, and a space will be left. It's been mentioned, I'll just bring it up. There's a space going to be left for a school to be built. That's going to be handed over to the council, for the council to decide whether it builds a school or not. 14 years to make up its mind, at the end of which it will go back.
So, if my understanding is correct, then there's going to be no access to the new site from the 174, is that right?
Initially, no. There will be access to the commercial area. Sorry, from 174. There's not going to be an entrance from 174 because of the bank. That bank is used for soundproofing and dampening. There was one of the questions we raised that was raised at the parish council when they inspected their plans. there's an issue around noise, and the bank purposely has been built to actually contain the noise, and there's a fence going to be put on top of that to protect the houses which are back onto that from the traffic noise.
Okay, thank you.
I hate that. Gentleman behind him with the maroon top.
Where are we? Sorry, yeah.
Don't move, the cameraman won't get you. Keep moving.
It seems that you had an outline planning permission.
Yes.
You're discussing different ways in and out of your site. So what agreement's been made?
Well,
the 174 across the top was originally going to be a dual carriageway. You can see from Brewgrass Lane, and that never went ahead.
Yeah.
So you didn't do the double carriageway. Surely they could put that one in and go out that way.
Yeah, but again, it's to do with the environmental requirements. When we looked at it, the noise that the traffic makes can prevent the house being built, so they have to have a bank and I believe it's a 6 foot, I might be wrong, it could be an 8 foot fence, which is going to go along the top of the bank to dampen the sound. Again, taking heavy vehicles onto and off of the site, onto the 174, which is a fast moving road, is not going to be viable. So that's why they're using Longbeck Lane. Because Longbeck Lane is unclassified in terms, and that's where they intend to utilise. And that's where the whole thing will start. It will start from the Longbeck side and move across to the 1085 side. Yes, gentleman there with the glasses and the blue and very fetching red piping.
I just have one comment.
Please.
I'm a regular traveller in Saltburn, and when they started building the new estate in Saltburn, the road was like a field. I would like assurances that something would be done, i.e. road sweepers down daily, so that when you drive down there, your car doesn't come out looking like a tractor.
I totally agree with you. There is a requirement for the developers to ensure that, I know, but it's down to the council to chase them up, and I'm sure a site this big, they will chase it up. Right. Sorry? I know they didn't. And that's a reflection on the...
I complained to the site manager and the main offices.
Yeah.
And all I got in the main offices was a young kid on the end of the phone who hadn't got a clue what I was talking about anyway.
That's what happens when we get a bit older. Right, the last question, this lady here with the lime green scarf. And dark glasses.
I live in Lambs Crescent, and I did put a question in about getting out of Meadow Road. Obviously it's been answered with other things. But I would like to say that it's more difficult getting out of Meadow Road in the summer. So when you're tableting or tabling some of these things, you need to consider that the traffic is much, much, much worse in the summer. When we have a lot of traffic coming from Redcar going through to Saltburn and vice versa.
Thank you for that. We'll make sure that will come in the working party. Right, thank you very much for attending tonight. And I'll ask you please to put your hands together for the councillors who've come along and answered the next presentation.
Can I have a show of hands from everybody in this room to say that we all commit to moving forward to finding an alternative solution? Please. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think that's carried that much.